This is Things You Might Not Have Heard, and I am Jay Cleveland Payne. In the queue for you today, 8 news stories from your Wednesday to give you for this Thursday. You deemed as conversational. We cover information, politics, current events, and pop culture news. Today we're talking some SignalGate because we have to. Also, the cat is back with Napster, although it's never actually left. And Chipotle had a big scare that had people freaked out for the day or so. We'll explain the vetting process and how those stories and the other 5 are going to be in this actual headline thing here. So stay tuned for that. Right now, I want to remind you that our website home is thisisaconversationproject.com. Find all the details you need about us at that website so you understand why we do it and the hows, if you will. Plus, you can email me with your comments, concerns, and questions at theconversationinbox@gmail.com. Today happens to be Thursday, March 27th, 2025. We have stories, as I said, 8 for today. We'll explain how they got into the queue for today. But remember, there's no particular order, no particular rhyme or reason, except for this sounds like the best way to tell the narratives for the day in these stories. We'll give you some context to how they got to be so important, how they got to be a reason for them to be here. But no particular, don't read anything into them unless we give you some examples of why they are here specifically. So let's go to the one that needs no example, no actual readout, because it's the biggest story going around here in the States that is not a tariff story, which we'll get to in a moment. The Atlantic actually published the full Signal chat messages showing the military plans about the U.S. strike in Yemen. Journalists inadvertently was receiving the sensitive military information. That journalist being Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of the Atlantic, who was mistakenly included in a Signal group chat where senior Trump officials were actually talking about a planned military attack that was happening in a few hours. Now, while Mr. Goldberg has been attacked as a guy that doesn't like Trump very much, which is pretty much obvious, it is a kind of the telling tale about this app, which does have encryption on both ends, but is not the most secure thing. And in fact, there are actual memos on not using it for things like this, being used for things like this. On that group chat were Vice President J.D. Vance, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and a few other folks that were kind of important. Goldberg reported that the chat contained detailed operation plans, including specific times and targets and weapon systems going forward. This can't be disputed. Now, what's happened is the response for this inclusion has come up with some inadvertent hearings. People that were going to have hearings anyway were sort of there, so they asked them the questions, that being the Tulsi Gabbard and the head of intelligence having to answer these questions. They were both on the chat as well, and people kind of figuring out what is going on, going through journalists' ethics, and what would happen if, Vladimir Putin's number was in Waltz's phone and he put him into the chat. Trump administration has downplayed the severity of the breach, basically blaming Signal, the app, with the Defense Secretary Hegseth saying, "But we won. It worked." That's sort of how we do things, which is great. We won, we worked, but the ends don't always justify the means, and the means of transmission has been extremely questioned, including the fact that every person I know who had any sort of military or top secret clearance background, including myself, would have been fired for something much, much less. So the complexity of the situation is there. There's a lot of semantics, a lot of back and forth saying it's not a war act, it's a action, and we won anyway. We did the right thing, and maybe we complain about Europe a little bit, but that's what we do, which is beyond the point. These are kind of gaffes that are, in most cases, you can't get away from, you can't outlive, you can't fix going forward. Unfortunately, the way Donald Trump runs his cabinet, these folks aren't going anywhere, and hopefully it doesn't get worse. Things, unfortunately, getting a bit worse for our economy across the world, as Trump has imposed a 25% auto tariffs, escalating the global trade war and the shaking of markets across the world. Now, this is a bit complicated because Trump announced 25% tariffs on all foreign-made cars and certain automotive parts. Some parts it gets less or more. It's going into effect next week, April the 2nd. This measure aims to boost the domestic car manufacturing by encouraging companies to produce vehicles in the United States. There's a caveat. I'll get to that in a moment. The administration projects that the tariffs will generate about $100 billion annually. That's from buying the cars and parts from overseas that cost more. Tariffs will apply to imported passenger vehicles, sedans, SUVs, crossovers, minivans, and cargo vans, as well as light trucks. Key automotive parts such as engines, transmissions, powertrain components, and electrical systems also subject to the duties. Vehicles from Mexico and Canada, taxation will depend on composition of their parts because bits and pieces are made in different places. So if it's a 50% Canadian part, then it'll be, 50% of that tariff going to it. Now, here's the thing. The markets didn't like it. General Motors shares fell by 8%. Ford, Stellantis, Toyota, and Hyundai, they lost about 3 to 4% overall. Tesla actually saw about a 1.3 drop. They have foreign parts in their cars as well, so they had to deal with that one. They will probably bounce back eventually, but here's where it comes down. The tariffs, and we talk often, I need to make a playlist on how tariffs don't work this way, because I do a lot of tariffs don't work this way, are basically pissing off many leaders around the world, specifically up north in Canada, where the new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, is saying this is a direct attack on Canadian auto workers, and it wants to defend with more things, probably more tariffs, more functions going forward. The bigger issue on this one is most of these cars are either built partially in America, or they are built for companies who have big stakes being here. There are many of these foreign auto parts companies that, may be a Japanese company, but they build the cars and mostly here in America. And the big thing is, does that mean Trump wants to build more American factories, which he does, owned by American people, which would be nice, which don't spin up in 6 months. So in the 8-9 years it takes to put a factory up, because it's a long-term plan, he'll be out of office maybe, and we'll be losing money or spending extra money on things. And right now, people are feeling that pinch, things going back and forth. A online commentator talked about being from Canada, but working in the States and buying a shed in the United States to send to his house in Canada, and how it costs extra to buy it here and extra to ship it there just because a new tariff. There's also tariffs going on things like lumber, things like that are not listed here from the robot editor. But it does actually talk about the increase in things and how Donald Trump wants to make people pay for it. They'll pay us more because they're ripping us off and all those things. But the cost always rises. Cost always goes up. And it goes up because the foreign people will spread the cost to us. And domestic people will raise their prices because the foreign ones are already up. So why not raise their prices as well? That's actually how tariffs actually work. This is not a tariff thing, but this is a issue with Canada and Tesla specifically on their business model. They are banning Tesla from future rebates and freeze payments amid the dispute with the tariffs. So one thing Canada's going to do to try to fight back the powers that be about the U.S. is taking some measures to fight back at Tesla in their participation in the electric vehicle market for rebate initiatives for that nation. The Transport Minister, Chrystia Freeland, announced immediate suspension, like right now, on all rebate payments to Tesla, which total about $43 million in Canadian. That's about $30.11 million in U.S. Each claim will undergo individual scrutiny to verify the validity before any funds are actually dispersed going forward. And this action follows the notable surge in rebate applications from Tesla, with daily claims escalating from 300 to about 5,800 prior to program's termination in January. Because people want to try to get in on this thing right now. So they're trying to get in before it really goes away. Minister Freeland also directed the revision of the eligibility credits for upcoming incentives for zero-emission vehicles, programs to ensure that Tesla's exclusion as long as U.S. tariffs against Canadian made in effect. Essentially, you want in on the program. Tesla's not going to have that issue. Now, Musk, who also has Canadian citizenship, which we did stories on weeks back about Canadians saying, well, do we really have to keep him, has this issue going back and forth. He's doing war with both the nations that he belongs to, except South Africa, which is an interesting take on its own. But this is not just a national thing. Many cities and provinces are actually dropping Tesla for issues of finance as well, as Toronto itself seeks offering financial incentives for Tesla vehicles used on taxis and rideshare services in the city. That Mayor Olivia Chow stated that the exclusion will persist until trade disputes with the U.S. are resolved, which means until there's some sort of resolution of whatever sort between the U.S. and Canada, there'll be extra issues for Tesla to deal with in Canada. Developments pose challenges for Tesla's operations in Canada, obviously affecting sales and increased costs, affecting what we're dealing with right now. The broader EV market is also a big deal, as right now Tesla is not number one. It's fighting it for its life against a Chinese manufacturer, which is now number one around the world internationally. Not quite here yet, but it's only a matter of time. before it happens, because if you put a tariff on it, Trump will probably allow it, even if it's Chinese cars, because it's going to cost more, which will make everything cost more, which, as I said in the last article, is how tariffs actually work. There's some issues with our health departments. The CDC, the NIH, and some other agencies are going to get ready for the DOGE layoffs that are expected, with RFK Jr. restructuring the whole thing, being a puppet master to figure out what to do. This is one where, fortunately, there's more time put in place to make this thing work, hopefully equity, and make more sense. Although the way DOGE is cutting things, the Department of Government Efficiency, it's not so much efficiency, it's just the low-hanging fruit. People, last ones in, get out, period. Not based on whether they're brought in to enhance a program, or whether they're brought in to be trained in because other people are going to retire soon. And by offering the upfront, hey, we'll pay you to go away thing, just means they'll pay some people to go away, maybe, and they'll other folks they're just gonna get rid of because not enough people are taking the bait to go away. This initiative by Musk to basically restructure everything by basically terminating people is in play, and the medical field type stuff, the Department of Health stuff that is run by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is now in the targets, but he gets a chance to sort of figure out how he's going to do things going forward. The CDC and the NIH, Center for Disease Control, and National Institutes for Health are two big things on the chopping blocks, and they're two really big targets for the Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy over the years. He doesn't like what they're doing. We know about the vaccine stuff. Part of the restructuring includes laying off about 1,300 employees from the CDC, about 1,500 from NIH exactly. But like I said, Kennedy gets a chance to play with those numbers going forward. Some of these are already gone. Some people are already gone, count towards this number, so that's a good thing. But it's going to happen. It's being done. It is what it is. The reductions are part of a broader strategy by DOGE to essentially decrease the federal workforce in general, as it's a money saver. However, when you look at how these things are done, in most cases when you do it in the public sector, it's a quick way to put cash on the books for shareholders so they get a big bump into their stock price. There is no stock that is United States, and when you cut these people here, unfortunately, the budget for these people isn't going to cause much of a dent in the main means of what's saving money. The biggest issue is a lot of it is entitlement programs, Social Security, and big groups like the military, which we'll see some reduction, but not the major reduction that's going to make a big difference or actually a dent in what's going to happen. This is me speaking, not so much the economist speaking, but let's think about it for a second. You're going to have to cut big funding stuff, big things going on. And right now, we just announced a new contract for an F-57, whatever it is, going forward, when the F-37 doesn't work, and we're going to give it to someone, Boeing, who can't build a spaceship properly, which is why astronauts were stuck in space for extra 9 months. We're throwing money at that, so we're throwing money at new stuff and not cutting the right old stuff, except getting rid of people who actually do stuff. It gets interesting. Many folks are very up in arms, including folks in the medical community and the science community, because not a lot of science, a lot of medical information is being out there, put out there in, let's just say, the right proportions for people to actually engage in, as opposed to doing your own research and getting things that are sort of fringy and not really tested, because it's out there and it's easy and it's simple and it's not being said by the government. We're going to pause from the news right here and ask for you and your assistance. We need you to like, share, and subscribe to the works we do. This one in particular, because if you like this program here for things you might have heard, it tells me that I'm doing a good mix of sound and good mix of stories, a good mix of commentary for you to engage in, or a good mix for you to be a little bit upset about so you can really rage like me. I will tell you myself, about 45% of the things I look on YouTube are things I don't necessarily agree with, but I like the hosts, I like the way they present things, and it just goes with it. So I like to get from that standpoint of it's sound production, even if it's not quite sound science or process that's going with. And I like to argue with people as well. So like it so that I know that I'm doing the right things. If you like it as well, the algorithms will probably show it to other folks so they can judge for themselves. Share this with like-minded people, whether it's for the love or for the hate, so we get more people involved into the projects. And subscribe to us via whatever feed you like to. If you're watching this thing here, it's on X, it's on Facebook, it's on YouTube. We use YouTube as our counter, and right now we're at about 1,998, 99 or so. So we're almost at that 2,000 marked, so we're happy about that one. But we're using that as a gauge. But wherever you want to get your news, and we have these things in various spaces as well. So stop by our website. This is conversationproject.com, and see all the forms you can find us. We're also on TikTok with short forms. We also have a shorter form of this, so you want to get this one in less than 7 minutes. You can get that instead of waiting the whole 30 minutes for this one. Also, we have the replay in an audio form and just the newsletter and email form, which is just the links. Check it all out at our website. This is conversationproject.com. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our videos, to our audios, to our content, so we can grow the News Nerd Nation immensely. Ron DeSantis is making a play, and he's making a play to help fill some of the jobs that may be left behind by undocumented immigrants being sent back to where they came from. What they're doing is weighing options on easing child labor laws to fill those jobs. Now, this is a response to the labor shortages, which is exacerbated by the stringent immigration policies. Essentially, instead of picking up all the rapists and killers and murderers, they are going into the factories and pulling the low-hanging fruit, people who are there undocumented. They have the right to do that, but they went on one statement and they're basically pulling the easy folks to get out there. They're sending them back to wherever they came from, and if they screw it up, they send them to a prison because they have odd tattoos. That's another issue. But this new legislation, which is called Senate Bill 918, is seeking to amend current restrictions to employment of minors between the age of 14 and 17 to overtake some of these jobs because someone has to fill them, and there's not enough Floridians to do that. It will remove limitations on 16 and 17-year-olds from working between 6:30 a.m. and before 6:30 a.m. and after 11 p.m. on school days. Also seeks to eliminate the cap on working more than 8 hours when school is scheduled for the following day. So yeah, this proposal will also allow minors to work more than 30 hours a week during the school session without requiring any waivers. 14 and 15-year-olds, such as those who are homeschooled or employed by parents in general, or have completed a high school diploma, even though they're young, would be exempt from existing work hour restrictions under specific conditions. So they can work all they want to, essentially. Governor DeSantis expressed support for the bill, highlighting that the potential for teenagers to fill the employment gaps left by undocumented workers is a great thing. It will teach young people the work ethic. What's wrong with expecting our young people to be working part-time? I mean, that's how it used to be when I was growing up. But they weren't working overnight night shifts, if someone had to think about it, or factory jobs that are a bit more technical that need to be kind of focused all the line. This is something that's going to face opposition. There are people who are saying, you really want 14-year-olds working 30 hours a week in their off-school hours, which seems like a very valid question. Questions like attempt to strip away basic safeguards in Florida's children. Essentially, now they can be exploited just like the parents can be in their work efforts, and if they're not unionized, they're going forward. Now, there are various places like here in Arkansas where there's work requirements. They're called volunteer hours, but work requirements on young people to actually graduate. And those things are becoming more popular because there's the notion that these kids these days don't do anything, which I tend to kind of agree with to a point. But I'm not sure I'm sending my 13-year-old, or eventually be 14-year-old, go work factory work overnight because I don't think she's spending too much time on her tablet. That seems to be a bit of a stretch to have her work an overnight shift on school nights, because it sounds like a bit of a stretch to have her working overnight shifts on school nights. We'll see how far this thing actually goes. I said the cat is back, but the cat never went away. Napster has been sold for $207 million to Infinite Reality, who plans to include 3D concerts and e-commerce in the newer platform. A pioneer music sharing platform founded in 1999, if you remember Napster, you remember the good old days, it's been acquired by Infinite Realty. The company specializes in immersive digital media and e-commerce and plans to transform Napster itself into a new social interactive music platform. The revamped service aims to enhance the artist-fan reactions through virtual 3D spaces, enabling virtual experiences such as concerts, social listening parties, and merchandise sales. You can go into a virtual home and see the t-shirts that you buy, see somebody wearing, and buy them for yourself, or digital stuff, most likely. It marks the latest chapter in the evolution of the service after its initial rise and subsequent legal challenges that basically made it go away, leading to a shutdown in the early 2000s. Napster relaunched as a subscription service with various ownerships, Best Buy and Rhapsody being two of the biggest ones. Best Buy, I think, was the last owner of them. In 2022, it was acquired by HiveMind Capital Partners and was sort of sitting there just dormant as more of a brand than something that actually was really viable. The CEO of Infinite Reality emphasized the company's vision to lead the internet transition from a 2D to 3D world, and Napster will be one of its tools going forward. Using AI-powered tools, Infinite Reality aims to empower artists with new monetization and engagement capabilities, fostering deeper connections into the audiences. Nostalgia for the brand, and millennials are kind of jumping on this one heavy because it was a thing that was built while they were being born, if you will. They were born into Napster. As a Gen Xer, it was like cool to use, but they were born into this in this sort of the world where everything was digital, nothing was things, and even until of course someone decided vinyl was a thing again, is a big deal. So is this for nostalgia purposes, or will this actually be a new brand that will actually take us to the next level? Infinite Reality hopes it works out that way. We'll see in the upcoming days what they can provide for us for this service. Adolescence breaks Netflix record with 66.3 million views in 2 weeks. We've talked about a couple of big record-breaking streaming things in the last couple of days because I guess no one wants to leave the house, and the woke Snow White is definitely bombing. So a lot of things that are picking up steam are things on the streamers, and Netflix is making another big hit with Adolescence, achieving a record-breaking 66.3 million views within the first 2 weeks release, making the most watched limited series on the platform to date. It premiered on March 13th. It's a 4-part British crime drama created by Jack Thorne and Stephen Graham, which also stars Eddie Miller. The series follows the harrowing story of 13-year-old Jamie Miller, portrayed by Owen Cooper, who was arrested for the murder of his classmate, Katie Leonard. Each episode is neatly filmed in a single continuous take, which immerses viewers in that unfolding drama that itself is amazing. It sparked significant discussions about teenage behavior, social media influence, and society issues. Unflinching portrayal of sensitive topics have resonated with audiences, leading to widespread acclaim and debate. Critics have lauded it for compelling narrative and innovative filmmaking, the closest thing to TV perfection in decades, some people have said, highlighting what's going on. And success underscores Netflix's ability to deliver impactful and conversational starting content. I have not had a chance to see it yet because the last few weekends have been dealing with basketball, this one as well. And so it's going to be a late one for me to watch going forward. But because of all the talk about it, you guys are eating it up eventually. This is one that's going to get a lot of talk for, and it's really, really deep, dark, and has a lot of people, as I said earlier in the read-off, talking about just how we're treating our kids these days, how we're going to fix that. Maybe a bit of an extra discussion. If you want to throw up some ideas here, let me know. But it's a very, very, very apparently good show that is easy and quick to watch. Many people have already picked up on it. We'll see what it sparks in the way of creativity, more shows like it, and the conversations on the issues it involves. And finally, panic spreads over online false rumor of Chipotle bankruptcy. Were you freaked out by the thought that Chipotle was going away? Recent rumors suggesting that Chipotle Mexican Grill is filing for bankruptcy and closing all its restaurants, every single one, unfounded. Misconceptions appear to have originated from confusion surrounding the closure of Farmacia Fresh Eatery, a spin-off venture by Chipotle that ceased operations in 2024. Some reports misinterpreted the development to widespread misinformation about Chipotle's financial health. Essentially, the spin-off, the offshoot, the new thing that did not work are shutting them down. So people thought, well, Chipotle's shutting everything down. They reported a 14.6% increase in total revenue last year. They're actually doing great at Chipotle's. They reached $11.3 billion in their revenue and rose 7.4% in corporate restaurant sales themselves. Chipotle is also going to open 300 new restaurants this year, probably because they're shutting down the other ones to fill those gaps. Sacramento and Westlake Hills, Texas, 2 big places they're going to really showcase some new Chipotle's. Officially addressed the rumors of bankruptcy by saying, nah, there's no issue here. Just, doing your research sometimes turns into rabbit holes where people get a bit misled and confused, misconfused. Maybe a word. We'll check it out later. But Chipotle is going nowhere. So my goddaughter Nyla does not have to worry. She can eat all Chipotle she wants to when she comes to Little Rock because it's not going away. We got her covered. It's there. Now, what is also there, well, actually it's not here yet, but what is there is our feeds on Facebook and X. And every day, all day, every 50 minutes, we put out news stories from articles across the nation, across the world, across various sources on those feeds at facebook.com/thisistheconversationproject. and x.com/th_conversation. And what you do at them places is you engage in these stories we put out there. And we put them out there from, like I said, various sources, various times, various things. And a lot of them are very well put out together. Lately, we've had a chance because we've had a chance to have more actual outlying stories and a lot less Donald Trump and administration stories that overtake everything. We've had a larger mix of things to go to, which is why we have stories like Chipotle not shutting down and on the Adolescence show doing so great. So what do you do with those stories in the feeds? You look for stories like this one, which we'll post in about an hour after this thing goes live on the rotation. So if you're watching it live, wait about an hour, you'll see it. If you're watching it in replay, you have to go back and find it. Headline for this one is, U.S. could run short of money to pay its bills by August without a debt limit deal, which we already know, but the CBO is announcing right now, hey, our next government shutdown is in September. So in the way we're spending money, we could lose that money by August. We may not have the full 30 days to deal with this one. So I may not get a government shutdown for my birthday. I may get it for my wife's birthday. She's born in August. I'm born in September. So she may get the happy birthday gift of a government shutdown. Yay us. So if you want to talk about this one right now, instead of kicking the can until July and August, it's simple. Go to our feeds and look for this story or any story you see that we're posting and engage in it. Like it, love it, hate it, share it. Do all you can to show that you want some interest in this. And it could be because you really do like it or you really do hate it, but you do want to talk about it because it's conversational. What we do is every day we take the last batch of stories that the cover from. For Monday, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The rest of the week, it's just a previous day. And we look at the top half of the stories, more or less generally half. It's not always exactly half, but it's basically the top batch of stories with all the biggest engagement going forward. Literally the numbers of how many people clicked and shared and replied to this one. And we pull from those, we whittle them down to the right numbers. On Monday, it's usually about 30 to 45 stories, and we get 10 stories into the queue. The rest of the week, it is 8 stories from about 15, 16 or so stories of the day. And that's how we get those stories. All the stories we had today were top 16, 17 stories. Had a lot of big ranking stories today. And some of them that, in other cases we would have thrown out there, but we only get 8. If the 8 we picked today are not the 8 you think we should have picked, you can let me know. Email me at theconversationinbox@gmail.com or just reply in whatever video you want to and say, why didn't you talk about this one? We'll explain. Maybe it was not queued up for the day. Maybe we hadn't got to it yet. Maybe it didn't get the numbers that you thought it was. Maybe we talked about it or posted a few days prior and it took a while for it to turn into something conversational. Maybe it was in the range and we chose to talk about Chipotle over it. And then we can talk about that one. Our sponsor for today, our story we teased yesterday, for example, was Hawk to a Girl, Haley Welsh, coming back to social media with a trailer or a teaser, I should say, for a new documentary that's being produced about her. No one wanted to talk about it, and I'm okay with that. Now, our sponsor, which is worthy of talking about, and Ground News. Go to our website. This is theconversationproject.com/Ground News. Use this affiliate link for 40% off the Vantage plan, and you can get better coverage of the news by yourself. Now, lately, we've been dealing with one story in particular and talking about how it's been covered in different ways by different platforms. One platform in particular has flip-flopped in the amount of coverage. Beginning with calling it a nothing story and trying not to talk about it, to flipping the tables and blaming everybody but the people who screwed up in the process on the issue and trying to turn it into something that they can salvage because they're there. That's one platform that I actually watch. There are other platforms that sort of doing the same sort of thing because they lean that way. If you can't tell what story we're talking about, rewind and go back to the first story of the day. But Ground News allows you to get the news coverage the way you want to, from how you want to, literally how you want to, it from who you want to. They give you a chance to uncover news and where it's coming from. You get unbiased perspective because you get all the perspectives. Local, national, and global stories, you get the links and the sources to everybody who's covering it, and you can see who is covering it, how it's covering it, and the most important thing, who's not covering it. That's where the blind spot feature really comes into play. The blind spot feature has a ranking of stories that are being extremely pushed by a certain thought process, certain agenda, certain outlets that aren't being pushed by the ones that oppose it metaphorically, the ones that oppose it in thought process. So you can see what stories are being overplayed by one side and underplayed by another side for whatever reasons. Maybe the side that's underplaying it doesn't want you to hear about it, so they're keeping it quiet. And the side that's overplaying it wants to make it sound like it's something much worse than it is, so they're overplaying it when it should be something in the middle. Your opinion matters, and you can get your own opinion by seeing what other people's opinions, where the source is, who owns it, how they actually tend to report on things for all stories. Ready to read layouts and side-by-side comparisons to the stories out there, so cut through the noise for going forward. Visit our website, thisistheconversationproject.com/ground news, and get in on the deal. 40% off its Vantage plans, also off their other plans as well, and you can download this for your phone, watch it on your email machine. You can also see it on your computer. It's an app, it's a website, it helps you see beyond the headlines and think beyond the bias. It is ground news. Conversation Project lives online at thisistheconversationproject.com. We are very happy, very proud to provide this service. We call it a service. It's a thing. We are going for profit. We're trying to make some money on this thing to hopefully pay for things, including pay for itself, which is the number one thing. And we're doing a good job with that one. We appreciate all you do for that one. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. We do the money talk all weekend long. That's where we do our pledge stuff. We'll talk about our partners in that as well. But the biggest thing we need from you every single day is your participation. Your participation helps us do this. We do these stories based on the shtick is your engagement. You vet the stories as conversational. So we need you to vet the stories. Follow us on our feeds on Facebook and X, and you can help us vet these stories. Facebook.com/thisisconversationproject, X.com/TS_conversation. You help us know what stories worthy of talking about. We pick the right ones there, hopefully, to get into the conversation and go further beyond. Now, today, this is Thursday, so if you see this on Thursday, the 27th, I expect to do a live feed around lunchtime, which I suspect, based on the numbers of people showing up on this spring break, will probably not be all that spectacular. But we're gonna do it. We're gonna put it out there, and we'll leave it up for a little bit to see what happens. I've got some plans on going over some backstory, just sort of switching things around, just free format, open style, because I'd like it to be something more like the Don Lemon things, where he goes into some stories and people react to it. I am a sort of reluctant Lemon head because I got to check in a lot of sources, but obviously I'm not that famous, not that don't have that popularity, don't have that favorability. So if Don, if a keyword pops in your head that gives me some love in your timeline, check me out. Give me some feedback, because I've been a great follower and a fan of you for many years. And I'm doing this independent journalism, just like you are doing as well. So hopefully I can get a little love from you, rub off some of the scraps on your end, and get a bit more engagement that's more towards the middle line of stuff. And ironically, most of our engagement is 55-60% towards the conservative side, which is fine, because I see myself as basically a 53% conservative. But sometimes the comments get a little mean, which is fine. In the meantime, follow us on our feeds. Email me at theconversationinbox@gmail.com. Consider being a partner. Consider checking out more sponsors. You do that all by going to the website. You can also find our origin story, how we got here, and see past episodes and see what you've been missing in the coverage that I've been giving you. What we do for the Conversation Project, because we offer you the chance to vet the news stories and put out so many different types of stories, is we are able to cover things that aren't just a rehash of the top stories. The mainstream media has to do that because they don't know when you're going to tune in. If you're still watching 6:30 news, they have to digest everything in 30 minutes, so they do that properly that way. If you're watching cable news or tuning in like the radio still, like I do on the top of the hour news, they've got to play for the most important stories, because they don't know when you're going to be listening to it. So they don't know how long you'll listen to it. So you might be listening at the beginning of the hour, the quarter hour, the middle hour, or towards the end of the hour. They've got to keep throwing it out there. So playing the hits, if you will. We can do a little better. We can give you a whole smattering of things that get missed, that don't get talked about, and some things that are sometimes just downright silly. The Napster story is kind of an odd story, but hey, it's commerce, it's money. It might mean something to you. So we get that in there. Bet you didn't hear Anderson Cooper talk about Napster last night, did you? You didn't. He didn't. It didn't happen. So we're going to do something live today and kind of roll with that. But if you want to see more about what we're doing, check us out at The Conversation Project. This is theconversationproject.com, and find out what we're all about. Now, right now, we're about getting off the air. It's Thursday, March 27, 2025. I'm still in spring break mode, which means I'm still doing work because I can't get away from it totally. That's the downtime from not being asked every 10 minutes, how do I plug this thing to my computer, which the answer is like this, means I can go through more paperwork, check out more contracts, and kind of plan for the next couple of weeks to going forward. So there's that. Plus, there's honeydews at the house for spring break. I'm keeping an eye on the preteen, despite her basically just living in a room for the weekend. And of course, little side projects that I've been waiting to get onto that are being left half done when I go back to work next week. But that's the life we live here these days. So on one of those things, we're going to write a couple things, we're going to record some things, and we're going to do this live thing this afternoon. We're going to do our best to have it out there. Join me for whatever it is that's going to happen, because we don't really know until we press the button. And you can see directly the inner works of the Conversation Project. Ask me. It's not really ask me anything, but go ahead, ask me what you want to in this actual part. And because I've rambled into that wrap up, I'm not in the right place to wrap things up. So let me wrap things up the way I normally do. Stay limber, stay hydrated, stay on task for the grand things you are here on this world to do. Your life is a marathon, and make sure it stays that way. Do whatever you can to not try to turn into a sprint, although we try to do that pretty much every single day. Love you, mean it. Sorry for going long in the promo stuff, but hey, maybe that means you'll actually just tune in for the thing this afternoon. Look for it around lunchtime, around noonish Central Time, to do this thing and see what happens. I'll be fighting for the bandwidth with, of course, both Don Lemon and Chris Chiliza, who I look at frequently. So we'll see what happens. There's probably some hormonesy stuff there as well, because they're always on as well. Love you, mean it. I'm done. Out of here.